So today you've got me, Mr Brazier, and Mrs Risebrow. We're going to start off by talking you through participation rates and what affects sport. Then we're going to move on to commercialisation, and then some gamesmanship, sportsmanship, and some deviance. So, first thing, we're going to talk about the 6 factors that affect sports participation. So, Mrs Risebrow, from your point of view, what sports do you play and what impacts did those 6 factors have on you?
So when I was younger, I actually participated in tetrathlete, which was swimming, running, riding and shooting. So from a younger age, I was always in and around,
That's quality.
Thinking about relying on my mum and my dad to get me to places, making sure that my horse was done so I could go off to swim training. But as I've got older, the socio-economic focus on that meant that as I was earning, parents were starting asking me to pay for it, and I realised that actually I didn't want to spend my small fortune of teacher pay on that sort of thing. So then I started up my netball, which has been really great, really, trying to, making friends through playing different teams, playing different levels. That's sort of where I've finished up, really. And I know people say with gender and things like that, there's stereotypes that girls and boys can only play certain sports, but again, that is only a stereotype. So there is, plenty of sports out there where you can still play both genders, and I know age has a bit of an impact on it. Regarding if you wanted to run a marathon or anything like that, then obviously you've got to be a certain age. But the majority of sports, I feel, definitely in this day and age are. I need to stop saying.
Well, you covered most of them. I mean, the 2 that probably haven't been mentioned yet is ethnicity and disability. So, from my point of view as a cricketer, obviously it's a pretty affluent sport. So, socio-economic group comes into play. You need a lot of equipment. You need help. Like, you have to have protective equipment if you're going to play.
It becomes quite expensive, I suppose.
And with kind of the experience that private school pupils get of being able to have the top quality nets and indoor facilities, they're really lucky and really fortunate, which obviously gives them a big advantage. So ethnicity in cricket is big because obviously in India, Pakistan, countries the other side of the world, Australia, New Zealand, cricket is their main sport, their national sport. And then disability, so I think the best example of disability sports is the Paralympics and the contrast between the Olympics and the Paralympics. Obviously they're both televised, but the kind of accessibility for the Paralympics is so much better now.
Yeah, I think definitely since the 2012 Olympics, when we had it here in London, the Paralympics definitely took off from that. It was, known as one of the greatest Paralympic games that we've ever had and that's ever been ran. And I think from that, people are definitely starting to realise that, just because some people are disabled, that they can actually participate. And we've tried it here actually, we've tried wheelchair basketball, and it is really hard to get going with it. So they are proper athletes. The strength in some of them is definitely an achievement from them.
And we said, obviously I just mentioned about them being televised, which links really well into commercialisation of sport. So the next kind of subtopic within the topic of socio-cultural influences is commercialisation, and how commercialisation, sport and media make kind of the golden triangle. So sports are adapted in so many ways, and if you watch the telly, you'll see kind of Sky Sports News. I'm sure if you could say 50 years ago there'd be a TV channel that just shows sport throughout the day, talks about sport all the time, then it would have been really unrealistic. But the impact that commercialisation, the media and sport kind of have on each other is amazing. So from kind of, you named 2 sports earlier that probably really contrast in how much they're seen.
Yeah.
How much sponsorship kind of commercialisation
So
influences is there in?
With it's about, you know, making something available on the market to be using or hopefully gain a profit from it, from a financial gain. Definitely with the tetrathlon, people say, oh, what's that? Never heard of it, because it isn't televised, it isn't something that people are aware of. It's in the Olympics, known as the pentathlon, where you add fencing to it. And even with netball, you know, it is definitely getting better. It's definitely more within the media. But, you know, England netball, the Roses have done a really good job with making sure that it is being televised, to make sure that athletes are being seen, and the sponsorship is definitely being used more, and they're using more knowing brands. It's about the brands as well within sponsorship. So obviously, you know, the smaller brands within netball, like your Mizuno and things like that, they are going to lose out. But when England are playing in them, it definitely gets seen more within the media, which obviously then makes more money for them. Whereas now they've changed back over to Nike. So obviously a huge brand that you know about, and people already walk around in Nike things. So the brand is only making more profit, which is gaining their commercialisation through that. So
and sport, Nike, for example, are going to be pay. The reason why they sponsor England netball is because they will pay England netball the most money to be their brand and their kind of manufacturer.
Yeah, that's it.
So the more, if England netball, for example, have 3 offers, Nike, Mizuno and Gilbert.
Yeah, good, Mr. Brazier. You know your stuff.
If Nike are offering the best package, the best all-round contract with kind of merchandise and money, sponsorship-wise, then you're gonna take the best option, aren't you? It's like if someone offered you £1,000, £200, or £50, you'll take the
definitely, and definitely with Nike as well. You know, because they are such a big brand, they can support the national and international teams. You know, players obviously get more money out of it, but because of the promotion of the elite sport, it can support the grassroots levels as well. So it's spreading the benefits across the whole area of netball, just not within the elite, which is obviously encouraging more people to get involved within the sport, promoting good lifestyle for them. So yeah, definitely with Nike, like Mr. Brazier's saying, they're going to go with the bigger brands so that they can have that advantage for everyone to be with.
And sponsorship wise, it's all about exposure, isn't it? So we've got a picture of Lewis Hamilton up in front of us, and his kind of helmet is covered, everything he's wearing, his kind of racing suit is completely covered. So he's got Vodafone, Santander, Nescafe,
Mercedes.
Yeah, he's got his big Mercedes badge on his helmet. These are huge brands. And the reason why Lewis Hamilton is wearing these is because he is probably the Formula 1 driver that gets the most publicity.
Recognition.
He's on the telly all the time. So these huge companies are going to be paying an enormous amount of money to have their brand on him. Whereas if you use a local athletics club or any local team, they're going to have probably a small local sponsor. Because then on the scale, locally, if, for example, it's a team in Biggleswade, they might have G&M growers or a local example of a small business that are going to want local exposure for people to see, whereas you're never going to get G&M growers paying multi-million pounds to be on Lewis Hamilton's racing overalls.
Obviously, though, the problem that we've got with commercialisation is that, you know, the larger brands definitely highlight more money, so they're going to be more successful within it, which, you know, sees that the smaller brands don't get that recognition, so they will be losing out on the money. But because big brands, or especially within the media, it can interrupt, and they do then have the... they can determine as a sponsor what is being shown and when timings can change and things like that, because they might say, I don't know, if it's sponsoring Match of the Day and it's about timings of events and things like that, they are going to say, well, actually I want it on at this time, so it can backfire to the team. because sponsors want the best out of it, which obviously then the audience lose out because it's not that enjoyable to watch constant TV advert breaks and things like that.
And I think another good example, which is probably a little bit too old for the pupils that remember, would be...
Might be too old for me, sir.
Yeah. Well, if it's too old for you, it's definitely too old for me. Would be Lance Armstrong. When his deviance came out of him taking drugs, and kind of the impact that had on cycling, all of a sudden every brand that had sponsored him, he was the figurehead of that sport. As soon as kind of it all came out, everyone just dropped him straight away, didn't they?
Yeah, so behaviour.
So his behaviour and his negative press was having an impact on the people that sponsored him.
But it can, obviously we've got to think about as well, is like the player and performer, it has a massive effect on them, both positively and negatively. Obviously they're getting money out of it, so they can become elite, but it can put pressure on them, puts pressure on them to make sure they are winning and be in that limelight all the time, to ensure that their good behaviour comes off for their brand, otherwise they'll lose out on the sponsorship deal.
And kind of the other side of commercialisation would be the media and how that's changed sport over the kind of last 30 years. An example from football and the most obvious one for me would be, if you look at football shirts from 40 years ago, they've either not got anything, just a club colour and the number on the back, and then it goes to they have the club badge on them, and then all of a sudden they've got a brand making their shirt, and then they've got a sponsor across the front, and now some of them have got all of that and a sleeve sponsor and a sponsor at the bottom underneath the number. So they've gone from being plain tops with a number on the back to now having potentially 3 sponsors on them, and that exposure from games being on telly and Sky pumping millions of pounds into football, obviously it's really appealing for a company to be associated with a club. And clubs don't just have one sponsor anymore. They have a drinks manufacturing sponsor, a food sponsor, a bank that's associated with them. Most of them now have a betting company that's associated with each club.
Money.
Yeah, money crazy. So we're going to just talk quickly about how sport has changed due to commercialisation. So I'll stick with football for a second. So the multi-ball system. So many years ago, there'd have been a handful of balls at a game, and as soon as it goes up into the crowd, it takes 5 minutes for the ball to come back down, because if your team's winning, you're going to take ages to get the ball back down to the pitch. But now, as it's on telly, you need the ball in play all the time.
With cricket, especially because obviously you play it as well, I find that Test cricket can be boring sometimes. So I know they've obviously brought in the 2020, which has made it really exciting, especially with Stokesy in the World Cup, made it well exciting. And bringing in different rules and changing the formats of games as well. So commercialisation has had a big impact on viewers' experience there as well.
And that's companies, and the ECB from the cricket one would be, people aren't going to watch 5 days of cricket anymore.
No.
The people have jobs, sport's changing, the world's changing, so they need a game to start and finish in the same evening, maybe under lights, so people can go after work.
Maybe a bit more excitement within the game.
Yeah. So Super
If
Sun...
you find cricket exciting, that is, I suppose.
No one can find cricket exciting. So next little bit is we're going to have a conversation about sportsmanship, gamesmanship and deviance. So sportsmanship, if we stick with kind of the cricket example, obviously sportsmanship takes a massive part of cricket. I remember the reason why I played cricket is the 2005 Ashes, and remembering that, I was 10 then.
Yeah, little boy.
And Andrew Flintoff, after England won, went over to Brett Lee, who's on the floor. He'd literally batted all afternoon, and the batsman at the other end, Kaspovic, had got out, and Brett Lee was gutted on the floor, and instead of running off with his teammates, Andrew Flintoff went straight up to him and shook his hand and kind of patted him on the back.
That's a big memory to make. I like that. That's a powerful memory for sportsmanship, showing the fairness and...
I'm not saying I'd do that now.
I'd be you should be displaying more sportsmanship, really, sir. So that's where you lead into your gamesmanship, I suppose. If that's not you, you're trying to think you're the big I am.
I'm running off, giving it the hand to my ear. You're not shouting now, are you?
So So, you know, thinking about gamesmanship, is it the right thing to do? You know, we all probably show it within our sports. I'm definitely one for showing a bit of gamesmanship on the netball court. I try and display as much fairness as possible, but there's nothing like a little shove on the side of the circle to make sure I'm going to win that ball, bending those rules a little bit without actually breaking them, but just making sure that I'm going to get one up on someone.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a difficult one, because we say you know, you shouldn't really show deviance, which we definitely shouldn't, because that is breaking the rules. But gamesmanship, everybody would probably apply it to their game.
Everyone's guilty of gamesmanship.
Yeah, that's it. I think, you know, if you're the perfect sportsman, that's probably a bit boring, isn't it?
Yeah, you're a winner if you're gamesmanship. It's all about winning, isn't it? If you can bend the rules, if you can get taken advantage, whatever way, it's you've got a great chance to win, haven't you?
Definitely.
And then deviance. So we've gone through sportsmanship, which is having etiquette and playing to an unwritten set of rules, having like a code of conduct, to gamesmanship, which is bending those rules slightly that are within the game, and now we're on to deviance, which is going against society's general norms and values. So we've got some examples written down, which is Dwayne Chambers and his drug scandal, Zinedine Zidane letting his emotions getting the better of him in the World Cup
French
final.
Player, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, I know football.
Headbutting an Italian player in the World Cup final. And then I'm going to attempt the last name, Tatiana Chernova.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So
drugs?
She was part of the Russian Olympic
scandal.
Yeah, so she won. She beat Jess Ennis, and then years later it found out that she was taking drugs, so then Jess Ennis got given the gold in the World Championships, and she got disqualified. So I looked on Wikipedia actually. When I saw her name there, I thought I need to firstly work out how to say it, and then secondly I thought I'd have a little look. So she competed between, I think it was 2009 and 2013 without getting caught, and then in 2013 she got caught and had 4 years worth of competitions disqualified.
Wow.
So she got taken out of 4 years worth of competition. So they worked out that she had been doping for that long and she'd been getting away with it.
And that's a big one. So if you're listening, then obviously performance enhancing drugs is a big unit that you'll look at in year 11, and it's really interesting to see why people are cheating and what's the reason for deviance. Obviously the pressures to win is massive on professional athletes, and probably on yourselves as well. When you're playing, you like to win and making sure you're doing the right thing, but deviance is not the way to go, especially using performance enhancing drugs.
And at elite level it links really well with what we were saying earlier with commercialisation in the media.
Yeah.
If you're sponsored by a massive company that's pumping a lot of money into you, then are you more likely to cheat? Because the pressure from them is going to be huge. The pressure to perform at a level, if you're on kind of prime time TV with knowing that millions of people around the world are watching you, and there's potential that you might not do very well in a race without kind of a boost, that could be making sure someone else isn't playing or improving
and we
yourself.
also all like a little bit of extra money, so that pressure of financial stability, you know, if you're not going to win and you know you're not going to win, is it worth taking those performance enhancing drugs to make sure you get that extra financial gain? I don't know if it would be if you were stripped of your medals and glory that way.
Yeah, and flipping it round, if you're a drugs cheat and you win, or if there's an instance happened that you've gotten away with and you then go on to win the event, morally, could you live with yourself?
Yeah. That's what you look back on with Lance Armstrong, don't you, with his doping, how many years he did it. He set up the charity of Live Strong. You know, he's got to live with that for the rest of his life, and what people now perceive of him, you know, whereas before he was a role model in sport, role model outside of sport. But how do you live with that? I don't know.
He was Nike's poster boy for so long, wasn't he?
That's it.
And all his charity work, and then all of a sudden to have that completely tarnished, and no one will remember him for a cyclist.
No.
He's just now
remember him for his deviance within the sport. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
No problem. It's been great to be in the pod room.
We're here. 20 minutes. Bang in the middle of our other two. So thank you very much for watching. Or listening.
I think they might be listening actually. Yeah.
And they're probably asleep.
Yeah, might be.
So thank you very much.
Bye-bye.